1975 and stayed till 89. Then I came back again to live here about 6 years ago. And I wanted some stories about the sea from different parts of the world, and I wanted one based locally about pearl diving, because pearl diving is something that's always fascinated me.
It's about the heritage of Dubai and the UAE as well, isn't it? The pearls.
Absolutely. I mean, the industry of the UAE was pearl diving for hundreds of years, and that's what really sustained the region. So it's a very important historical aspect. And I went out and looked for a story and couldn't find one. There were plenty of coffee table books with pictures and information, but no children's story. And I was quite surprised, because I thought that there really ought to be one. So I decided I'd write my own to tell. But when I'd finished it, and the research was fascinating, and I thought I'd like to share it with more people than I'd be able to if I just went round telling it. And I thought it was quite a nice story that I'd written, so I showed it to a friend of mine who directed me to a publisher who specialises in books in the Middle East, a UK-based publisher called Stacey International, and I sent the story to him, and they liked it. So it went from there, and having done a story about the sea, then I was introduced to Hamad Al Ghanem, who breeds Salukis, and I thought how nice it would be to write a story about the desert. So that's why I wrote Saluki, Hound of the Bedouin.
Okay, so how do you go about developing your characters?
Well, sometimes they're based on real people, and then I develop them. I always have children in the story, and I try and imagine what the relationship might be like between a father and son, or a grandfather and
so that people
grandson.
and children can relate to that as well. It's important,
exactly,
isn't it?
Very important. I think that children want to feel that they empathise with the character in the story. Yeah.
And they actually kind of connect to that, and in a way they can play that role out to their parents and say, you know, I mean, I know from my little niece, she'll sometimes come in saying, "Mummy, I'm this character," or "Mummy, I'm that character." It's kind of a nice way for them to create their imagination as well, isn't it?
Well, I think that's how my imagination's developed, and possibly that's where characters, some of them come from. Because my background's drama, and I've always enjoyed dressing up and acting out stories, and I've done a lot of theatre and education work around schools, and so I think that the drama background has actually informed the way I write.
Okay. Now, one of your most recent books is The Peacock and the Mermaid. How did you come up with that story?
Well, the manager of Jebel Ali Hotel, Mark Bettesworth, who sadly has actually recently been killed in a car accident, you may have heard, very tragic. He was a delightful man. He knew me very well. He'd hosted my book launches at the Royal Mirage, where he'd previously worked. And when he went to Jebel Ali, he said to me, "I like your stories, and I'd like you to write a story for us about a peacock, because Jebel Ali Hotel have lots and lots of peacocks." And actually it gave me a new freedom, because I'd focused very much on local culture, but just to be asked to write a story about a peacock gave me complete freedom. And so I started thinking, what if in the beginning the peacock wasn't all those beautiful colours and didn't have that wonderful tail? What if in the beginning he was brown, and what if instead of that ghastly raucous voice he's got now, perhaps he had a beautiful singing voice? So I asked myself these what-if questions and came up with some ideas. And the peacock's colours had always reminded me of the sea. So I suppose the idea of where he acquired his beautiful tail was from under the sea, and that's where the mermaid.
Do we have this particular book that we're talking about? Do we have this one here with us now?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
This is the one, okay.
Well, perhaps you could read us an excerpt from there.
Sure. Shall I start at the beginning?
Yes, please.
It's a good place to
start.
Long ago, when the world was new, Peacock's feathers weren't green and blue. He didn't wear a dazzling gown. Back then he was, quite simply, brown. Peacock found it most unpleasant to be mistaken for a pheasant. "I want, above all else, a robe to make me famous round the globe, in shades of ocean blue and green, and all the colours in between." But his singing voice was sweet. To hear him then was quite a treat.